Stocks fluctuating a bit, but silver has hit a 30-year high today. Our next guest has predicted a collapse in equities in the first quarter, but the S&P 500 is up more than 3% in the past month alone. Gijsbert Groenewegen runs a precious metals hedge fund as founder of Silver Arrow Capital. And Gijs, you've been spot on the money when it comes to the metals, but we continue to climb up in this equities market. Have you been wrong? What's going on?
Well, first of all, the quarter is not over yet, of course.
Of course.
But, I think that the market is priced to perfection. If you look what's going on in the Middle East, and, all these countries have dictatorial regimes. So you have to wonder what is going to replace those regimes when they get replaced. And that's basically the army or the religious parties. Because as a result of the suppression, they didn't have any possibility to
For the short term, right? Yeah. We could see them set up democracies that are healthy and long-lasting.
Yeah, if you have the structure in place to do that, correct. Yeah.
And Egypt, you don't think they have the structure in place there?
Well, I think there were a lot of articles which were saying, there's nobody who's really leading the uprising. So the Brotherhood didn't do it, and there was nobody really that could replace, I think, what had been in place there for the last 30 years, the dictatorial regime.
So are you saying that the dictatorships are good, essentially, for equities and for markets because of the consistency of the leadership, and now there's a lot of turmoil and uncertainty, and that's going to weigh heavy on U.S. stocks?
Well, I think you could look at it that way, but on the other hand, it's time for change, as clearly is indicated by the uprising in the many countries in the Middle East. I mean, the disparities between poor and rich, the corruption, etc., etc. It's time for a change.
Let me ask, though, Gijs, what has this got to do with U.S. equities? I mean, all of the problems we saw in Europe with the sovereign debt crisis couldn't bring this market down. Now we have the uprisings in Egypt and the Middle East. Some people think, this is the Berlin Wall moment, a fantastic time for the Arab nations. The equity markets don't seem to be affected by this stuff here in the U.S.
That's so strange in a way, because if you really look what's going on, you see a huge potential for geopolitical instability, which was also driven, of course, by food prices. Yeah, because if you look at the emerging countries, about 30 to 80% of their disposable income is spent on food. So if your prices rise, and I don't think food prices are really going to come down, you're going to have a problem, because you have a lot of unhappy people then. Yeah.
So how does this tie back to you're saying that the political unrest ties to food prices and somehow, and then that leads to a surge in commodities prices? Is that where you're kind of going with this?
Well, it works two ways. So in one way, you have the geopolitical unrest and the imbalances that are coming to the surface. Yeah. On the other hand, we see worldwide that the interest rates are rising on the back of inflation expectations from the hard and the soft commodities. Yeah, I think which is important to mention also here in the U.S. is that the 30-year yield is threatening to break out of its trading range. Yes. Since 1981. Yeah. And if we break above the 4.9%, which is seen as a crucial level, then you could see much higher interest rates, which of course is going to be very bad for the housing market if there would be any recovery. But on the other hand, also for the debt burden we have, because the interest burden is going to rise dramatically in the coming years.
Let me ask you, because we're going to bring you back a little bit later to talk more about the economy and stocks, but metals is really your wheelhouse here, and you've been spot on there, as we said. What happens to gold here? I mean, do people continue to use it as an inflation hedge? Does it go higher on concern for the unrest in the Middle East?
The inflation hedge is there, i.e. higher food prices, as we discussed, and also, of course, the geopolitical unrest. Yeah, so people take that hedge out in the precious metals. Okay. But I want to mention also that if we get much higher interest rates, that could actually dampen the demand for precious metals, because you carry cost, to hold gold and silver, which don't generate any income, is going to be much, much higher.
So what, you think it holds around this level? We're seeing it at 1387 here?
Well, I think, it's not clear. The market shows that in a way. Although we have gone up on the back of, for example, what we see happening in Bahrain and Libya and so on, I don't think we see a clear indication, although I think that silver could break out on the upside and could actually go to $45, $50 if it really moves ahead here.